Somewhere there's music, da 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 da. Somewhere there's music, how high the moon. Oh, hello, Officer Tony here. Today we begin our epic series on how to work on your Epiphone Les Paul. Let's roll the opening credits and then we'll get into it. Hello, Richard from budgetguitarist.com. Today we embark on an epic journey. We're going to learn everything there is to know about setting up your Epiphone Les Paul. I have two here, two guinea pigs to work on. But before we begin, I initially started filming segments for this video, and very quickly I got to about the hour-and-a-half mark, and I realized I can't put all of this into a 15-minute video. I'm definitely going to have to bust this up into smaller segments, and so that's what I'm doing. So let's start with the book. So what does it mean to set up a guitar? It means to set it up to play correctly. If you want to learn all about setting up guitars, working on guitars, doing fretwork, anything and everything electronics, I think the guy to go to is the man who wrote these books, Dan Earlywine. So this is sort of like beginner and advanced. This is a really good book, How to Make Your Electric Guitar Play Great. It comes with a DVD, which is one of those things that, you know, if you like talk to your grandparents, they might have something called a DVD player, or if you have a Blu-ray player, it'll actually play these. But it's like video, you know, just like a Blu-ray disc, only it's not quite as good quality. Anyway, everything I'm going to tell you is in this book, and this book does a really great job of explaining it. I also have purchased several of his video courses, how to set up a guitar, how to do your own refretting, etc., and so on. Dan is the man. If you want to go beyond that, Guitar Player Repair Guide, also written by Dan. As you can see, there is just all kinds of knowledge in here. There's wiring diagrams for different guitars, and this goes pretty deep into everything and anything that you need to know. If you wanted to be a tech on the road for a famous guitar player, then you would want to go through this entire book. This also comes with one of those old-fashioned DVDs. Two extremely valuable books, and like I said, Dan is the man. There are plenty of guys out there on YouTube who will teach you how to work on guitars. I mean, I'm doing a video today, but I'm not the authority. Dan is the authority. That said, this stuff is not rocket surgery. In terms of tools you're going to need, I've kind of got this divided into two groups. There's the tools you have to have, and then there's the tools that I think are a good idea if you really want to do a great job, but they're not really mandatory. So kind of like beginner and intermediate. So let's go over the stuff you absolutely have to have. If you have an Epiphone Les Paul, you have to have a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver. And the reason is there's this flathead screw here, 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 and here. And so to be able to adjust the height of all of these, you need a flathead. Also, the bridge itself on Epiphone Les Pauls, you need, I don't know if you can see this, but you need a flathead to adjust these. Look at that, I'm bumping right up against the top of the camera here, aren't I? I'm bursting through the ceiling. I just can't give myself more room. Anyway, so you need a flathead for that. These are pretty small. On the website, when I wrote an article about this, get on there, I suggested you might want a set of jeweler screwdrivers because you can get a really small flathead. I bought like a guitar repair kit that came with this screwdriver that's got like a small and a big flathead, small and a big Phillips, and this thing's awesome. Flathead screwdriver, maybe small flathead screwdriver. Tuner. You have to have some kind of electronic tuning device or you cannot set up a guitar. New strings. This should be obvious. I normally play Diodario, or correctly pronounced D'Addario, but nobody calls it that. I call it Diodario. You go to Sam Ash Guitar Center, it's very hard to find Diodario strings right now. So I am playing Ernie Ball Super Slinky. Anyway, these are good. Diodario's good. They're all good. Wire cutters, mandatory, because when you put the strings on, you're going to have excess strings flapping around and whatnot. Needle nose pliers, very important, and you will see why. Look at that. You can see like the cord of like my microphone here. This is like a high budget show, let me tell you. Budget guitarist. Bumping my head on the ceiling. Okay, anyway, where was I? Oh yes. Truss rod, hex key, right? So this is what you get with the guitar. And see, I've got like a piece of blue tape around this. This is a trick I do. If you're like me, you've got about 50 or 60 of these hanging around. And so what I did is I put a blue tape around all the ones that I actually need for my guitars. So this adjusts the truss rod. What does the truss rod do? The truss rod helps you straighten the neck. So inside of this piece of wood, which is the neck, there's a big rod. And you can turn this rod and you can tighten it up so that if the neck is kind of like a U-shape, you tighten it up and then it straightens it. And so we may or may not need to adjust the truss rod. There's a lot of fear about the truss rod, like, oh, if you tighten it too much, you can break it. It's true, you can. But normally with truss rod adjustments, like a quarter turn is a lot. To break a truss rod, you know, if you're going around the clock a bunch of times, yeah, you might break it, but I've never needed to. You know, quarter turn, half turn at the most is all that you're likely to ever need. And if you need more than that, well, the neck's probably in bad shape. But I digress. Okay. This is a feeler gauge. In the automotive world, they need to be able to measure very small distances between two parts, right? And in the world of guitar, we need to also be able to measure distances. So what a feeler gauge does is you have the distance between the string and the fret, right? When you're pressing down on it, pressing down on me, pressing down on you. And you want to be able to see the distance between the string and the fret. And so you put the feeler gauge in there, and if you can feel it, right? If it's just barely touching, then this is a good way to measure that distance. This is basically 10 thousandths of an inch. I think you need one of these. I mean, you can buy a set of these at the auto parts store for $12. There's really no reason not to. A capo. You need a capo because when you are figuring out the relief in your neck, how much bow there is in the neck, then you need 3 hands, and you don't have 3 hands unless you do, in which case you don't need this. But if you have 2 hands, then you need a capo. That's the stuff you have to have. Here's the stuff that's nice to have. So this is fretboard oil, and this comes from Dunlop, and the point of fretboard oil is that your fretboard, unless it's got some kind of a sealant on it, the wood can dry out, and if the wood dries out, that's not good. And so you have to treat your fretboard with some kind of oil. This is lemon oil. Now, I have seen people on YouTube freak out over lemon oil and say, you should never, ever, ever use that on your fretboard. It will totally ruin it, and the world will... No, it doesn't ruin your fretboard. I've been using it for 20 years. Are there other oils you can use? Sure. You can, when you're putting strings on, tighten it and loosen it and, you know, do this like forever and ever and ever. Or you can have a string winder. There's plastic ones, and then there's this. So this is a $10 electric screwdriver from Lowe's. And then this, I think I got this for like $10 or $15 or $8, I don't remember, at Guitar Center, and it just fits right in. Now, you could use this on a drill too, but drill's kind of overkill. Pretty cool, right? Not too expensive, and it'll save you a lot of time. This one is a little more esoteric. This is a tool that you would use if you are doing like serious work on a guitar, and this is called a notched straight edge. So the concept here is that straight edges are like a big straight piece of metal, and you put it on top of the fretboard, and you can adjust your truss rod to see if your neck is straight or if your neck is not straight, right? The problem with that is you're putting it on top of the frets. You're not really able to tell if your neck is straight. You're able to tell if your frets are straight, and that's two different things. So with a notched straight edge, they make them in different sizes. So this size right here is 25.5, suitable for a Strat. This side on the other side is 24.75, suitable for a Les Paul. I also have one that's 25, which is suitable for a PRS. I might have a 24, I can't remember. Anyway, so what you do, you put it on the neck, and then you use the truss rod and blah, blah, blah. We'll get to that. But If you want to do like serious setup work, you can buy this. This is from Neck Check Guitars. I think this was relatively inexpensive. Lighter fluid. If you get really pissed off, you do the Jimi Hendrix thing and you light it on. No, this is really, 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 really good for cleaning just about anything. You can put a little bit of this on a cloth and you can scrub the fretboard with it and it'll get up all kinds of gunk and stuff like that. So here's the thing though, this will dry out wood. So if you clean your fretboard with naphtha, which is lighter fluid, then you have to dry it off completely and then you have to put the oil on because this will dry out the wood. This gets the gunk off, then you dry it really good, and then this oils up the board so it doesn't get, too dry. The wood doesn't get too dry. You can have guitar polish if you want to, cosmetic. This is Big Ben's Nut Sauce. Look at that, you can read it. Big Ben's Nut Sauce. It's kind of expensive, but I'm gonna tell you what, I think I bought this about 5 years ago and I still have quite a bit left, I guess. Why would you want Big Ben's Nut Sauce for an Epiphone Les Paul? Well, I'll tell you why. The G string. One of the design flaws of the Les Paul is that when the string, the G string, comes down and it hits the nut, instead of making a straight line, right, to the tuner, which would be probably about where my finger is, it has to go off at this weirdo angle and go all the way over here, which means it's hitting this nut at an angle. And what can sometimes happen is, even though I've got like a Graph Tech nut here, which is super slippery, when you're bending, it'll get caught on the nut and then it'll go out of tune. And so if you put a little bit of this stuff, just a little bit, in each of these slots, it will prevent your guitar from going out of tune, or at least it'll help. Almost last but not least, this is a string action ruler. This is by a company named Baroque. This is like the cheapo knockoff version of what they sell at StewMac. If you've got the money, just buy the StewMac stuff. It really is the best. But in a lot of cases like this and like this, you can get by with something that's a lot less expensive. This is basically just as good. It gives you all the same information. But this will allow you to adjust your action when you're setting up your guitar, because once you figure out exactly what you'd like your action to be, wouldn't it be nice if you could always set it to the exact same thing? Because we're talking about very, very small amounts of measurement here. So you're setting up a guitar and it's like, the action's a little high. Well, let me go down, just a little bit on here and get it exactly where I want. Then I can write down my numbers and I can say, okay, that's really good. So if I'm using inches and I'm going 64ths of an inch, there's a scale right here for that. So I can say, okay, I've got this at 6 64ths, maybe I want it at 5 64ths, or whatever the case may be. So there's different measurements on here. And then there's a guide on the back that tells you like where it should be in inches. Last but not least, if you bought that set of feeler gauges and you've got like a 1,000th of an inch or 2 or 3 or 4 thousandths of an inch, I think these can be really handy when you're adjusting your neck. So as I straighten the neck here, I can figure out, is there a little daylight between the fret and the fretboard? So how straight can I get this? And I can be very exact with this. So I can tell within 1,000th of an inch, I can judge, right? So the best guitars in the world are set up to that kind of specification. The best guitars in the world, they'll know if it's 1,000th of an inch off. Well, you can do that too. It just takes time and practice. So learn how to do all this stuff. You can set up your guitar probably better than the person at Guitar Center who has to just kind of rush through it and get a whole bunch done in one day. You can take your time, learn your instrument. If you have more than one instrument, it's especially worth doing this kind of stuff. It's kind of fun if you're into tinkering. If you're not, yes, you can pay somebody $35 to $50 an hour to understand what these things do.
Well, sorry folks, that's all we got for this week. Next week, we'll take the strings off and clean the fretboard and do some other stuff. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. We will see you next Friday at 5.